All right, here we go. All right, Vlad, let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Hey, today we have Kabir and Akash, and they are going to present and talk about their AI product, SecondAxis, the product second brain, as they call it. Um, Akash, Kabir, do you want to give us a quick overview of how you came up with this?
Yeah, for sure. So it stemmed out of some of the problems that we face ourselves as developers. I was working in a startup before where I was a single developer, joined at a very early stage, had to scale the team from just me to 11 engineers at the seed stage, and turns out that there has to be a lot of Jira product management that needs to be done to communicate stuff with other engineers. I was not familiar about it, and I was really inefficient, to be honest, for the most parts of it. And the team's efficiency was not great. We hired a product manager as we got to Series A, and that streamlined a lot of processes. So I realized how important it is to have the structure in place. But another thing that I also saw is that PM was vested so much in just managing sprints, writing PRDs, writing Jira tickets, that he was not able to talk to users a lot. And there was the salesperson who used to send some meeting transcripts that were always gone unseen. So that's
Interesting.
what I realized about this problem and thought that we'll build a solution for it.
Awesome. Well, Michael, do you have any
Yeah,
questions?
no, it sounds great. It sounds a very familiar problem. I think a lot of product managers experience this. I know you'll talk about this in a second, but I think it's one of the reasons why we were intrigued to have you on in this thing is because, not only is it a product built with AI at its core, but it's a product built using AI and a product for product managers who are building things with it. So we're operating at many, many levels of relevancy. But let's dive in. Let's take a look at what you got. I know you've got a couple of slides. Let's start with that, and then I'd love to see the product itself.
Yeah. Let me bring up some quick slides. I will sure be to not bore you with a lot of them. So let me just quickly share my screen.
Beautiful.
So we're building SecondAxis, and we're calling it the agentic product management platform for teams that are doing software development today. So product management, like Akash said, and Michael, you double down on it, is like a slow and a manual task, right? You're doing documents, you're doing PRDs, you're breaking them down into tickets. And what we've also been hearing within our customer discovery calls is that you're aligning stakeholders at multiple levels. It's like you have so many people you're constantly in touch with that everybody is moving towards the same idea. So you're aligning all of these people. This can be your CXO, this can be your devs, this can be your engineering manager, and that just creates a lot of space for a lot of documents. And then there's obviously meetings which you can't skip, and then there's the actual work, which is planning and roadmap, strategy, and talking to your users. Developers today are moving at this speed which was unheard of 5 years ago. Today 30% of the code amongst a lot of companies is being written by AI, and there's a future where about 95% of this code would be written by agents. This is going to happen when they start building features end to end. And that creates a huge problem, right? There's this one process which is really slow and manual today, that is product management. And then there's another process which goes hand in hand, which is development, which is moving really fast. And this creates like a huge gap where there's misalignment. And because a lot of people are trying to ship a lot of things fast, there are a lot of incomplete specs being shipped out, and that causes a lot of rework. So we're imagining, this ideology where even product management can move at the speed where devs are moving today. So what we're trying to do is build a product management platform where you take all of these things into a layer-wise manner and you bring them together. So you have the first layer of our solution is the context layer, or as we like to call it, the enterprise knowledge layer, where you have all your databases connected, like your code base, your sales conversations, your user activities, your documentations, whatever and wherever your product context lies. We want to bring it at one place so you can, start creating stuff with it. Then there's the layer of the agents, which are coming up.
Can I ask a question for the context? So basically, on the context layer, how would you solve for the stale context problem? For instance, when let's say a product manager updates a ticket in Notion and the engineer updates a ticket in Jira, and how do you make sure you don't have a PRD based on conflicting sources?
Yeah. I'll take that question. So that's one of the problems that we are actually trying to solve. And the thing is, if you use a ticketing system inside SecondAxis, what we have built is this complete link between how you come in with a feature and how this ticket is shipped. So if you're using SecondAxis internally and an engineer goes and update a ticket, we can make sure that we update the linked PRD and update the strategy space. So that stale context actually gets solved if you're using our entire software using ticketing inside SecondAxis.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've also noticed
and
too
our
that
replacement technology, this is going to essentially function as a layer that takes care of the whole process, correct?
Of the software development process, you mean?
And product management, yes.
Yeah. So our essential goal is to have very clear communication from a product manager or stakeholder to a developer or agent. So that's basically what we are going for. Yes.
I've also would imagine too that one of the nice parts about using LLMs is this agentic layer, which you're about to talk about, is that sometimes context does conflict. Sometimes it gets two sources that say different things, and part of what I would imagine count on those LLMs to do is to either resolve those conflicts or call them out. By the way, you said here this and you said here this, so here are a couple of options that would incorporate. Part of the interesting thing about using AI in the context layer, that agentic layer, is that they can try to help us resolve some of those conflicts. Over the long run, we want to resolve the context layer so that it's all consistent. But even that part is going to be something that's going to take a lot of time to make sure that it always stays in sync. So hopefully we can count on the LLMs to help us with that too. And sorry, rabbit hole, but
yeah, and I think you picked up a right kind of segue, Michael. I don't know if you remember, we were talking this one time and you were telling us that you had these entire bunch of PRDs from 7-8 years ago when you were at a product company. And we're seeing this feedback from a lot of people coming in that there's this cause and effect that takes up a lot of time, and that's something which is on our roadmap with the traceability layer, which I'm going to come to in a second. It's like, once you, let's say, change a few words, even a few words in a PRD, let's say you have a development stack, which is, let's say, Python and Django, right? But let's say your team changes it to Node.js, right? That small change actually trickles down to every ticket, every resource you're building, and it's really hard to keep up. So something that's on our roadmap for next month is building this cause and effect feature within our app, where if you change one part of your product, how does it trickle down to your entire life cycle?
I sort of think of it as the technical debt module. At some point, right, something's going to change, and that's going to have impact in lots of places. And you might be able to cover the worst of it, but at some point, you got to make sure that there's a little bit of your roadmap reserved for aligning things that you didn't have time to align the first time around, or resolving conflicts when they come out. So it's a perennial problem, whether you're using a tool like SecondAxis or not, is keeping everything aligned and in sync. And so, let's just factor that in. All right. So we were interrupting you. You've got a context layer on the bottom, which has all those raw material pieces, and then you've got an agentic layer sitting on top of it.
Yes. So post agentic layer, this is where today's product management or software development lifecycle starts, right? What we're trying to give is this execution layer and this traceability layer on top. So what the execution layer essentially helps a product manager is go from, let's say, a feature request or a bug they have in just plain language, and do the entire process of product management and come up with tickets or prototypes at the end. And we've made this workflow so seamless that you come in add that feature or bug in, and it gives you the entire documentation and the process automatically. And this is sitting on top of everything you've already have in your product. So even the prototypes you create today in our app are basically prototypes that look like your app. They're not things like lovable or stuff like that, where you're actually creating a lot of stuff which doesn't resonate with your product. It actually looks like your product. The next thing is the traceability layer. Now, there's a lot of hype around the execution layer today that, you can go from this to that, you can go from this to that. But there's very little, content, or I would say solutions out there for tracking how a particular feature is performing, how, let's say the correlations are made. So let's say you shipped a feature, right? How do you track, your user churn is going down, and how do you point to the exact line of code that, this is what has caused, users jumping out at the, sign up process. So we're trying to do this complete life cycle where you don't just ship products, but you also track them in a way. And that's what, the complete SecondAxis solution is.
It's interesting you mentioned that, when you were going back to that donut grid or that donut graph with the time spent, a big chunk of my product management time is spending doing the analysis to answer those very questions, right? Like I shipped this and the following things changed as a result of that, release. Was there a cause and effect there? Is there something else going on? And I think to some degree, even if there weren't a machine or a code-based traceability layer built into a tool like this, just taking the heavy lifting of writing PRDs and requirements documents and other sorts of things off my plate would give me more time to figure out what the root cause of some of those changes might have been. And ideally, I love the vision about being able to say, well, it was this release of this feature and maybe even this line of code that caused this particular KPI change, for example. Even if I just had more time to think about that and understand that a little bit, because the rest of my grind wasn't spent on the grunt work, I would be better off. But the more help you can give me, the better, which is, definitely the vision about where you want to go. I like it.
I love it.
Yeah, just on that point, like one thing that we have seen a lot of PMs doing is using a lot of tools to build quick prototypes, test whether things are working or not. But when it comes to softwares that are building, maybe in a Series A company with 5 engineers, it still is slow to ship a feature and see whether that feature made any impact.
Make a difference, right? Exactly.
So we're trying to basically make it efficient so that they can accelerate that build, measure, learn loop. So they can build features faster, learn from it, and then iterate on it.
Good. All right, keep going.
All right, I think that was it for our solution layer. I think moving on, we could, kind of demo what we have.
Yeah.
And show you what the product looks like today.
I think so. I think a lot of our product managers in particular I'm guessing are going to relate to the situation that you're describing. So let's see how it could actually work to make life a little bit better. It'll be very helpful.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let me pull up my screen here. Okay, perfect. So what Kabir showed previously was this diagram of different context layer, and I'm gonna start with that basic. So we were talking about this context layer that we have that we call integrations in our application. What you have in integrations, we have identified these 6 main buckets that usually a PM that PMs are juggling around. One is sales conversation, pretty straightforward. When they're talking to users, they're talking to hundreds of users every week, and they want that information synthesized somewhere. Then there is project management, where they're using some tools like Jira, Linear, writing tickets. Telemetry is one of the major one, which we were talking about just now. That is traceability, that we call it. Tools like PostHog and Google Analytics, which actually gives some sort of user data on an application. And then one of the major one is the code base. Obviously, one of the things that we have heard and identified is PMs generally are non-technical. And they're writing PRDs, and sometimes it's like, it is really good to have that technical context of what actually the code base is, so they can communicate it better with the engineers, so that there's no conflict when they go in these stand-ups or sprint planning meetings, whether that thing they're presenting could actually get built or not. So this is the context layer where we integrate all of that context, and everything that we generate from after this point would infer from all of these tools that are integrated. So I'll quickly go to strategy space. That is basically is the road mapping tool that we have built. As you can see, we have some of the features that we want to build ourselves, and it's a roadmap that we have done over here. Now, what I'm going to show you how easy it is to sort of update the roadmap and start building a new feature. So let me click on Add Feature, and you can see an AI assistant comes up. And what I'll build is I'll build a feature of adding, let's say, an email notification feature where anytime a user does any activity in the roadmap, people get informed across the organization. So what I'll do is I'll ask the chat to add that feature. So I'll say, okay. So when I send this message, what this AI assistant is doing, it's reading the roadmap that I have currently, and it's reading how I define my goals, OKRs, and it would give a template of some of the pre-filled features. So let's look at this. What it gives is basically the goal. So like a high-level goal of this feature, give some OKRs that you would want to track. So let's say we don't want to keep this mail rate. Maybe it's too verbose that AI gave. So I just remove it. It gives some requirements. All of these, keep in mind, are high-level feature requirements. So what I'll do is I'll add this to my roadmap, and it gets added so it gets added in my roadmap. Now what happens is it starts generating resources whenever I add this to my roadmap. And the resources, so I'll take this example. So what is happening right now, it's taking some time to generate resources, and it takes about 5 minutes. But I'll show a feature that has already been done. So let's say we are talking about user authentication enhancement.
Wait, just to chime in, email notifications for roadmap updates at the top of the Q3 2025. That's what you just added.
Yes.
And it is in the background preparing these other resources that you're about to show? Okay, got it. That's where I wanted to make sure.
So you can see like the one
that
popped up over here, and it's working on the generating tasks.
Okay.
I'll show something that has been generated before. So let's look at user authentication enhancements. So let me click on this resource over here.
And go to the document.
And go to the documents and click on one pager. And let me expand on this. So you can see this is the one pager that has been created for a feature that we have already added called user authentication enhancements. What you're seeing right now is called Composer. It's basically a cursor. It's basically a cursor for PMs where they can go and define features and iterate on it. It also has an AI assistant built in over here. So let's say you got this one pager. What we also want to sort of limit is amount of information that we throw to a user. We don't want to throw right away a bunch of documents that they don't understand. So we generate a small one pager that they can read. And now let's say they want a user flow diagram. So what I'll say is, can you make a small user flow diagram and update my document? So now you can use this chart to basically interact with this document. You can obviously go and edit it yourself as well. But the good thing about this chart is that it has context of all the tools that we have integrated before. So the context layer that we were talking about, it can infer from all those things. So it has access to GitHub. So sometimes, let's say if a PM is non-technical, they can ask this chart to go and look at the code base and update the one pager and make it more in tune with how my code actually looks. Now so what it is doing right now is just generating a flowchart diagram and putting it in the document. We'll wait maybe a few seconds for it to complete.
One of the things that I love about chat agents is how forgiving they are with spelling.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're an LLM, you know that what I intended, even if
Exactly.
I misspelled it as it went. I originally started like correcting my spelling when I would put prompt through, and now I find myself just, you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
it usually does.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can see like it gave an inline edit of a user flow diagram that it made. And usually I've seen my PMs doing it. They go to Lucid Charts or any sort of flow charting tool, spend a lot of time creating these user flow diagrams. And honestly, you can do it very quickly over here. And you can also intune this document. So let's say what I'll show next is I'll say, go look at my code base and update this, make it a bit smaller. So what we also want is a PM to stay in the loop as much as possible, because they know exactly what they need to build. So this chat is a great place where they can be in the loop and guide AI, because it actually needs a lot of guidance in all of these aspects. So you can see it called the search code base tool. So it means it's just going, looking at the code base, reading the existing documentation or whatever code we have. And then now it will give an update for this diagram. We'll wait for a few seconds here.
I think another good thing while this is generating is this one-click convert on the top. So like you said, Michael, there's a lot of heavy lifting in terms of creating PRDs, creating engineering docs. And while you're trying to communicate the same idea, it's at varied abstraction levels. So what we've provided is this button on the top where you can like just go and hit it, and it will start generating a PRD from this document. Do you want to go and show the mermaid diagram first?
So it basically give an edit, and you can see it simplified it quite a bit. And now let's hit accept over here, and
what format is the drawing? Is this something you can click on, zoom in, or edit?
Yeah. So it also actually reduced. So you can see like it reduced some of the text before, but yeah. So you can click on it. We are gonna bring a feature where you can also just like manually go and do stuff over here. But for now, you'll have to ask chat to edit the document. But almost always does the job for you right now. And yeah, so that's what I want to show, ability of Composer, that you can edit stuff in the document. You can obviously share this with your teammates. You can live collaborate. You can bring in your engineers, your engineering managers in, and they can use their chat as well. Now let's look at the tasks that were created. So one of the major thing is like every PM, the end deliverable for anything is a ticket that the engineers can execute, right? And we added this feature, and what we generated right from the strategy space itself is one pager and task. So you have some of these tasks already generated and also classified between backend and mobile. If you look at this ticket, this task that is generated over here, you can see it's broken down into description, acceptance criteria, feature overviews, business requirements, user stories, and ticket scope. So that's also something that gives PM a good template to start with, to have all of these information broken down. And again, we really want PMs to be in the loop. And let's say the mobile thing is something that they don't really prioritize right now, and they don't want to do it. They can again use the chat and let's say, can you remove the mobile from ticket board and add a front-end screen ticket for passkeys. So let's say this is something that AI might have missed, that PM caught. So what it does is, what PM would do is go and say that, I don't want this mobile anymore. My application is desktop, but I also want this front-end component that has been missed. So what the chat is doing right now is it's basically can edit this entire board. So it gave this sort of edit. The first column you see is it proposed a delete. So it will say that this will be deleted. Let's accept it. And it also gave this new document, new ticket, will accept it. And you can see a passkey. So you can see a passkey ticket been added to the board. So so you can use this chat to customize this board in whatever shape or form you want. And once you're happy with the ticket, click on send to launchpad, and then you can select the launchpad is our ticketing system. Let's select launch one, send it, and it gets added to the launchpad.
If I were a Jira user, what would the difference be?
Yeah, for sure. So for Jira user, we have given this ability to send to these platform where let's say I'm going to send it to GitHub projects. It would load repository. Let me do SecondAxis, and there's this project I've created, and it would go and put ticket over there.
Okay.
Can you assign them like a owner or engineer to the task?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Can you assign a user or like an engineer or owner?
So if you go to Launchpad,
within the partner tool.
Within the partner, for some of them, yes. In Jira, you can assign. Yeah, the short answer is yes. You can do it right. Yeah.
And I think I want to mention one thing here is that, you know, we're trying to give this ticket template, which has a lot of content right here. And if you open up can you open up a ticket which already has some content? Like, you'd see that there's a button down there called copy context. And what we're trying to also do is make developers' life easier. You know, people are using Claude Code, Cursor, and stuff like that to kind of build these tickets in. And most of these information are actually not written for, you know, a human builder. They're written in detail so that when you give it to an AI, it can actually go from that feature end to end, and it actually knows what to build. So it's not hallucinating and building a feature. You know, it's not building something you don't want. So we give this copy context button, which copies the entire context of the ticket. And you can just go and paste it in one of your AI editors, and it'll start, you know, generating that feature end to end. So this template is customizable however the PM want, but we're prescribing one, which is, you know, which we've seen and tested out that, you know, is most useful for, you know, our AI agent. So you could see we've given exact, you know, kind of code blocks here, which the AI can refer. So this is a lot of rich context. A human might not need because, you know, he's obviously in the loop. But when an AI is building it from the scratch, it would need that, you know, nudge to what to build.
Yeah, that's a great segue to what I was going to show next, and that's something that we are demoing it for the first time here at the podcast. Is the agentic layer that we have started implementing. So what Kabir was saying, that these tickets are written so that agents can perform and align with PM, so that they ship something that PM really wanted. What we integrated is this agentic layer here that you can connect. Let's say Devin, we are bringing our own coding agent in soon. You can connect Devin and you can start assigning tasks to it. We have been we were speaking to this one company that assigned like 200 tickets in a month to Devin because to solve small bugs. But a problem with these tools is they don't sometimes have enough context, or they lack context.
Right.
If you give sort of half-baked requirement, they would make up the second half of it. And so this is the place where PM can really fine-tune the ticket, and let's say they are happy with it, they can click here to assign it to Devin once connected. And how it looks like is in the agent space, you'll see what are the processes Devin has been working on. So we did two features ourselves. So watch list was one of our big features that we have on our roadmap, and it basically starts that feature and at the end gives you a PR. And what we also make sure is do a QA back. So if Devin, a coding agent, implemented something, SecondAxis will go and QA that PR against that ticket, against that PRD, to make sure that what it is shipped actually aligns with what a PM wants.
And that starts to go up to your traceability layer as well.
Exactly.
Is that it, you know, if you're able not only to queue up the task for someone to work on, but then evaluate the result against what you queued up, then you're starting to close that loop in some interesting ways.
Exactly. So just one last thing, then I'll open for questions. I know I've been speaking for a long time, but one feature that I also want to show is create prototype. So this is also something we have baked in very recently, and this is coming from a lot of conversation because PMs are getting very visual using tools like well, as Kabir said, quickly making prototypes for the engineers. So we really wanted that to be a part of the experience of building the feature. So let's say I'll open something that I've already created, a prototype. So this is a prototype that I have already created using our app. It's very simple. You just click create prototype. You see the chat that what do you want to build, and we'll go and build it for you. Now you can see, as you can see right here, this prototype looks very similar to our application. And
so wait, I'm actually having trouble. So you're saying that this is an actual like embedded iframe of a
exactly. So the best thing about this, you can see it looks very similar to our application. Not all. If you look at very carefully, the icons are a bit different, but you can get the feel of it. And the feature that we are trying to implement is this button. So you can see we don't have this button over here. So we were trying to link this composer document back to the strategy space. That is the roadmap. So you click on it, and this is the prototype embedded in the document. You click the features, and it got selected. So basically, this is what I've made, and you can see it's basically in the context of your app. And now what you can do is you can click convert to PRD, and you can have that same process from the prototype itself.
I think just imagine how much time would it take you to go on Lovable and actually build something that looks like your product. What we're trying to do with this, under the is see what your code base and your UI and everything looks like, and trying to bake that first before we implement your feature. So that when your engineering team, they can actually see this is how the thing would look like on the app. This is how it would function. So we're trying, and we've seen with like Akash said, having conversations with multiple people, the process has flipped a little bit. It's more first creating the prototype, and then flow is to create documents and stuff like that. So I think we want to empower PMs that you do stuff here, you do it the way it has always meant to be, and start creating documents post that.
It's interesting you mentioned this. Two quick comments. One is that one of the things that I always insisted upon, have always insisted upon during my product management role, is that as part of the PRD, as part of the requirements of why we're doing this and who we're doing it for and what it's supposed to accomplish and what the OKRs are and everything else, I think it's really important to be able to communicate a visual, I would always call it a mock-up of what was in the product manager's mind. And I think it's really important, especially with a user-centric application or applications that are really UI based, that how it looks is actually a really important guideline for the implementation itself. So the idea of being able to generate a prototype, or even just a non-functional prototype, just a mock-up of something, and saying this is kind of what I had in mind, is a hugely valuable resource for whoever's going to be doing the development, whether it's a person or an agent, because it helps them resolve questions that would otherwise be left up to interpretation. Exactly. And so this idea of being able to actually visualize not just the user experience flow or the bullet points of a PRD, but the actual user experience of it, critical piece of this. Now, you may get it wrong, and in fact, I would sort of suggest that at best, you're going to get it maybe 75%, what will probably end up being what it's going to be looking like. But that's a hell of a lot better than zero, and it's a hell of a lot better than leaving that up to interpretation or rework. As an engineer goes digitally and go like, oh no, I want it to be like this. How about this? No, not that. Like this idea of cutting to the chase, of saying this is kind of what's in my head. It's close. You guys build it, or build it the way you need it to be. But now you know what I was thinking when I kicked this thing off. To me, that's a huge time saver. Maybe even more when you go back to your donut graphs about time spent. If you're in the business of building any kind of mock-up or prototype in order to help with your definition of what the feature is going to be, this could save you tremendous amounts of time.
100%. And I want to second this and just add that also in terms of aligning across the organization,
right?
You have an experience in mind, and whoever is your counterpart in, I don't know,
marketing or support or executives,
they'll be like, no, this has to be completely different. And this is where you're saving time, you're aligning faster, and basically you have a way of, getting an automated tool to basically speed the
100%. We had this structure in my last product management job where we would do a demo of the mock-up before we committed it to engineering, where we'd say, all right, we're going into this sprint now. Let's look at the prototype. Let's look at the mock-up, and do that in front of non-engineers and non-product managers to give them a flavor for what it is, and have them say that's not going to work, or be sure to add this. Because talk about getting buy-in, Vlad. Like it's not just about handing it downward or outward to your engineering and product team. It's about outward to the rest of the organization as well, so that they can often, and I've had this happen numerous times, where I thought me and my engineers were like lock set. We know exactly what we were going to do. And I'd show an early version to a support guy, for example, and he'd be like, that's not going to work. what better way to avoid rework than to give people the opportunity to review a mock-up or a prototype before you actually start digging into the development? It's a huge piece, and cutting out the timeline or the time sink that it takes to build those things, Figma or Canva or even something more sophisticated, could be really great. Even if, again, it's only close, right? At least it gets you to the point where you can have a meaningful conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's exactly what we're going for. Even with designers, sometimes you want to communicate clearly what they want when you're making a high fidelity UI. And it's a great way to just quickly show like the interaction pattern that you're looking for, and then they can go and build a very
Your designers are going to hate this feature, by the way, because they're going to be like, oh, that's the way it should be. But it's better to show it to them and have them critique it than to make something up from scratch that isn't what you intended, which is
Yeah, I sort of disagree with that a little bit, because so I think the AI would it's very hard for AI to be creative anyways. One thing that designers hate that I have just from my experience is changing requirements, because they spend so much time designing an interaction pattern in UI with very perfect margins and stuff, and then someone comes and say, change this. And that's where basically this would help them align. So let's say a PM just quickly build this interaction pattern to a designer and give them, this is what I want. Now just make it beautiful.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, one of the things that was always a work in progress and probably would never be finished with all of my design partners at a product management level is that I was always saying, look, we'll respect your brand kit. We'll respect your standards. We'll respect your look and feel, user experience options, style of icon, right? We want to be consistent with your standards. It's going to be a lot easier for an AI to be able to meet those standards if they're well defined. But that means that all of those design standards need to be down in that context layer. As long as that stuff is in there, then the odds are good that your prototype is going to get closer and closer to what your design team is going to insist on anyway. That's going to help everybody. So we're getting there. We're getting there.
And there's also the other side of this is the design is storytelling. So essentially, it's going to help you tell the same story from product, from engineering, from user experience point of view. You're telling the same story through a design that you kind of cluster agree on.
At some point, we want to be able to share this with an actual user. At some point, you want the end user to say, maybe a trusted set of test users, right, who are your friendlies, or like I used to call them my advisors, and say, hey, we're kind of thinking of a tool like this. What would you think of that? As long as you can have that conversation. But you're 90% of the way there already. If you're willing to open the kimono up to end users, then now you've got something to show them before you really commit, and that could be another interesting validation point from a product perspective too. So
yeah.
Hey, you know what? This has been very interesting, Akash. Kabir, thank you very much for this. Let me ask you a couple of questions. Vlad and I have a couple of questions that we often ask developers and product folks that we talk with. But like I said at the beginning, this is a product using AI, built with AI, about AI. And we're all building them, right? This is part of the purpose of the Quantum Collective, is that we're all in the process of doing this. So if there were something that you would want to pass on to another product manager who's doing something maybe not directly related, but something similar, that was sort of a learning or a lesson that you learned from having built this version of this product, what would it be? What could we learn from your experience so that we don't repeat your mistake or do something that you had to learn the hard way?
Yeah, I think one is like a classic advice we got while we started building it. We were both developers, and for us, just building stuff was easy. I imagine that that's a blocker for product managers, but for us it was easy to just whip out stuff, right? But the difficult part was actually aligning it to what users wanted, and we learned it the hard way later, that we need to do customer discovery, we need to know what people actually want. So that was one classic thing. And I think the other big part of this process was actually we use a lot of AI. I would want to say we both have maxed out the usage of AI in building this product. And we're starting to kind of put that entire process into how SecondAxis is built, right? So we built this with, I don't know, we were looking at these stats earlier, and 2025, we've both used about 7 billion tokens in total. to work with AI and build SecondAxis. So that's a huge number, but where we are today, it's been really kind of intuitive. We have a process of our own. We used to tell AI what not to do instead of what to do, right? So it would just you tell it to build a feature and would go and touch maybe 20 different files and bring up something and break something else, right? So it's really hard for us to kind of build this boundary around what needs to be exactly built. And we started building SecondAxis with the same thought, what needs to be done, and the communication that has to be behind it has to be like very clear in terms of the exact line of code it needs to change and stuff like that. And most of the times, PMs or even we who have like maybe half a million line of codes in our app, we don't necessarily know what needs to be touched and what we as developers figure that out. But sometimes it's like we're missing that context. So I think having a system to kind of do that for you is really essential, and that's what we're trying to offer with SecondAxis.
It's interesting to put this in another context. The complexity of any code base or of any product management roadmap system, everything else that you've just talked about, is already more than a human being can understand. And the more systems it touches, the broader the code base becomes, the more features that are implemented, the quicker that happens. So I think at some point, one of the things that I'm starting to realize is that the only way we're ever, by the way, this has been true before AI, the only way we're ever going to keep up with the complexity of what we're building here is with the help of AI. So this idea of being able to sort of use AI to patch our own technical debt holes, to keep our documentation up to date, to resolve those contextual conflicts that are cropping up in the things that we're like, that's part of this job as well. And I think the better we get at it, the more we'll be able to keep our applications well supported and humming and understood with the help of AI. Not just relying on it to figure things out, but to help us keep it under our own belts. So I do think we're in the middle of this process where we're rewriting these rules as we go. The kind of applications we'll be building a few years from now are going to be completely different from the ones that we built in the past.
Yeah. And to add, from quantum collective point of view, I mean, essentially you are using AI to build an AI product, and you're increasingly using your own AI product to build it out. Right. And so this is fantastic. This is like here.
Very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
All right, listen, guys, thank you very much for this. We really appreciate your time. We're respectful and mindful of the amount of effort that you put into this, the amount of thought there. Vlad and I, having looked at this before and having talked about it a little bit, and having both been in the perspective of product managers, this is the kind of tool that I think a lot of product managers really need and will have. It almost seems like a no-brainer at some point that it's all going to work like this. So we wish you all the best of luck on this. We would love you to come back and show us future iterations as this thing goes, and more stories. And for all of those of you who are interested in looking at this tool or trying it out, because it is available today, ready to go, take a look at SecondAxis on the web and make sure that you sign up and get a demo of this thing, or start using it, because I think that it's a no-brainer that this is where we're all going to end up at some level, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Vlad.
Thank you.
Pleasure, you guys. Thanks again.
Cheers.